Good afternoon, this is Jeff with Sewer Tech Northwest. We are at 137 Southwest Poplar Court here in McMinnville. I describe everything as if you're standing in the street facing the front of the house. So right now we are off to the left of the front doorway. So this is a very tricky clean out to hunt down. I would highly recommend a riser be put on top of it. One, just so you can find the thing. Two, so it's more accessible. It's buried down in here at least a foot deep. So, best landmark I can give you, this is the first window to the left of the front doorway. The line comes out, let's see here, it's about 6 inches to the right of that center line of the window. And the clean out's about a foot out from the foundation of the house. Anyway, we're going to drop in here, 3-inch ABS clean out, checking the overall condition and serviceability of the sanitary sewer line. Water is running, we are zeroed out, and off we go. Line transitions immediately to 4-inch, and then to 4-inch 3034 PVC. They've actually got some pretty cool riser kits I've seen. Some of them will actually thread straight into the existing clean out. So you don't necessarily have to even do any cutting to some extent. Sometimes it's just simply to cut the length, but you don't have to necessarily dig down around the pipe to put a coupling onto it. So we just transitioned there over to concrete pipe. I'm gonna have to shade my screen a little bit. I've got kind of a nasty light glare. I may have to do a little bit of reviewing at this at home, even with that, but went through a little bit of standing water there a moment ago. First and foremost, I'll at least locate where that transition to concrete is. Unless something has changed of recent, I do believe that the city of McMinnville out here takes responsibility for the sewer line. I believe it's at the right-of-way. And or if it's not there, it's the street edge. Anyway, there's the main connection to about 65 feet out. I'm going to go locate that really quick here while the pipe drains. And we'll pull back and take a second look at things. Alrighty, located the camera head. Getting somewhat hopeful that concrete transition is where I'm hoping it's going to be. The line goes almost all the way to the opposite side of the street. Just about up against the curb there where I located the main. And a lot of times you can see how you've clearly got, you know, ABS, green 3034 PVC. I've been doing this a long time. I don't believe they used 3034 PVC back in the 80s. Typically, if you saw PVC in and around that era, it was typically white PVC. So anyway, the meaningfulness of that is generally when someone updates a sewer line and just magically stops it at a certain point up against old original piping like this. There's often a reason for that, and a lot of times, especially in a city like this where responsibility does get taken over by the city, a lot of times folks just take it to the point where the city takes responsibility. So we're going to pull back here, take a look. Apologize, I'm having a little bit of a time here keeping the camera lens clean. There's a little bit of buildup out here in the concrete. It has settled a little bit. You've got some standing water in the line here, which just causes stuff to build up to an extent. It's not an outrageous sum of standing water. It's just across most of that section. Alright, we're going to locate here and see where we are. Alright, so what I would do is just get a hold of the city and verify that the city does take responsibility from their right-of-way out. Where I'm locating right there, I'm actually going to pull the camera in really quick here and rerun this spot, just to get a little nicer image. Anyway, located there right up against the edge of the sidewalk. That was generally right in the right-of-way area there, so I think the pipe you've got here is updated up to where the city takes over. But I would verify that. Some of these things do change from time to time. You know, a city can, depending on who's running the place, can change up those things and one point they're responsible from the curb out, then it's the right-of-way out, and then sometimes they switch it all together and it's all homeowners' responsibility. So I would check into that. The concrete pipe is still functioning. It's just it's obviously on the older end. When you get settling like you have in concrete pipe, and settling in plastic pipe often means something different. One, it's a more malleable, flexible material. It's often related to poorly compacted soil. It settles under the weight above it. Whereas concrete pipe, my experience with it just as a preface, I've been doing this for 13 years. I've done almost 25,000 sewer scopes at this point. My experience with concrete is a lot of the time the settling occurs because the concrete pipe joints wear out. The grout that seals them up ends up wearing out, and those joints become slowly but surely exposed to the ground. In fact, you can see there's an earthworm right there on the sidewall. So that's one of the things I look for. So what typically causes this kind of settling in concrete pipe are the joints slowly but surely taking on groundwater and dirt, and it erodes the support out from underneath the line slowly but surely. So, from that standpoint, just being that you've got settling across this entire section, it's one that if this were to fall into homeowners' responsibility, I would recommend you update it. From a build-up standpoint, it looks like for the most part stuff is conveying through here without too much trouble. The standing water is not an outrageous level of it. It would be nice to get this cleaned out. You've got a fair amount of gunk built up in the flow line here. If that were to for some reason fall into homeowners and you didn't get it repaired, I would at least hydrojet the line to clean it. All right, I'm just going to put a couple reference markings down, and normally I use green paint. My supplier sent me the wrong color, so I'm using, it's kind of a brick red color. You'll see a little red T marking on the opposite side of the street, just a foot or two from the curb. And that little marking there is where the line hits the main. 4 foot 7 inches deep, in case you're curious about that. And it's possible some of this standing water may be related to just straight up buildup in the line. If someone's ever put improper stuff down the pipe, concrete really likes to grab onto that because of the rougher texture, and you can get layers of it that build up in the flow line. As the camera through and scrapes that junk loose, it can kind of sit out in front of the camera and dam the pipe up slightly. So anyway, I'm going to mark right here too. This is going to be right before the sidewalk. I would just verify with the city where the homeowner's responsibility starts and stops. Otherwise, the ABS and PVC pipe we just scoped there looks great, drains beautifully. Overall, the line is functioning at this time. The concrete pipe, not functioning quite as nicely as we'd like it to. In fact, the standing water is minimal enough that if you were able to do something like a trenchless epoxy liner on it, you would actually displace a portion of that water because of the liner. If that saved you, 10 grand, not tearing the street up, in my opinion, the standing water is not significant enough to necessarily warrant ripping the entire road apart to correct that level of standing water. That's my 2 cents on that, especially the distance that standing water is from the home. By the time you turn that pipe into a smooth as glass sewer line, that standing water becomes infinitely less significant to flow once you have that setup going on. And again, you'd actually reduce some of it. I don't think any of that's going to be necessary here, but just so you're aware. All right, that there as well, I have marked with a red T marking. Where I'm sitting at lines up pretty much perfect with where the for sale sign is at. And if you look, up and down the way, that's typically where you're going to see like utility boxes and things like that. So it looks like that transition is smack dab on the right of way. Anyhow, I would recommend the concrete pipe be updated if it falls into homeowner's responsibility. From a flow standpoint, again, it's still functioning reasonably well. I get concerned about concrete pipe like this. Once it reaches this age and where you can tell that it's exposed to the ground, you've got earthworms coming through the line, and I promise you that one joint where we saw that is not the only place that's happening. It's very common for concrete grout to be wearing out by this point in its existence. And where the line jaunts over to, it kind of heads towards the driveway at first, but it turns and shoots off to the end of the road a couple feet before you get to the left side edge of the driveway there. But yeah, I get more concerned about concrete pipe at this point, getting to a point where you get progressive settling because of the joints. or it can go from a 1/4 inch of water to an inch of water over the next, you know, few years potentially. That's what's more concerning. Right now, if you lined that, for instance, you'd end up with a pretty good result out of it, I think, all said and done. It would be worth hydrojetting first and taking a second look at it, just so you can get a clear view of everything, but you'd have very little standing water at that point and save a ton of money. But like I was saying before, I'm pretty positive City out here takes responsibility right where that PVC stops, so most likely none of that is even going to be necessary.